Good evening, everyone. My name is Danish. I'm the director at Tindak Malaysia and also will be your speaker for today's session. Due to unforeseen technical issues, there will be no Facebook Live for this given point of time. As a matter of fact, we are just recording this session and we may upload this on YouTube later on. So hence, the conversation will be a bit more private, and I would give more time for all of you to ask questions during the designated time. So before I continue talking, let me share my screen. Okay, so my screen is loading up, just bear with me. Okay. Unfortunately, today some things related to Zoom is a bit slow or not working as I wanted. So while this is for all of you to load up, this webinar series has two parts. Today is the very first part, more from a perspective of data, election related data. The second one on 30th of October is more related to conduct of elections and postal voting. So when you ask questions or want to raise comments, please contextualize it for that purpose. Okay. Let's start today's webinar, and we're going to go through the first part with me. Before I continue talking, and this will be shown again, our activities consume a lot of time, sometimes consumes also financial resources, especially in leading up to our PRN 6 2023, notably the Petugas, Pacha, and Pemerhati training, the 3Ps. So if you're of the strongest opinion that our activities actually value adds to your life and the life of this country, kindly do contribute whatever amount you think it is appropriate via the QR code. And when you put your whatever amount that you put in, please use the term called webinar fee. Tindak Malaysia is registered as a private company, hence it is inappropriate for us to see the words such as donation and contribution. And we made this simple for you. You just need to scan the QR code and you just drop whatever amount that you think it is appropriate for today's webinar, and all the effort we have been doing this since 2008. Okay, what's the gist of the discussion of today? We need to go through briefly what is misinformation, and we go to the meat of our conversation today, actual examples or even hypothetical ones, and then we are going to have a closing for this, for what we have learned so far. Okay, and as I'm touching about misinformation, and this, I will be upfront, it is a sensitive topic, and I'll be upfront. Can be quite passionate about this. So please do not take offense if I have made some remarks or views that is a bit too straight to the point. Okay, and when we go through these contents, please view the contents as purely as educational purpose, not to be construed as personal attacks or saying I have my malintent against this person, that person, or whatsoever. That's not the purpose of this webinar. Okay, and by the way, this disclaimer is going to be seen a few times during this presentation. I would like to especially thank my fellow Tindak Malaysia colleague of a data science background, Liang Jiahui, for developing one of the content examples that you will see later. Okay. So what is a misinformation? Okay, misinformation and as you have disinformation, right? They both sounds very similar, but actually they carry two different meanings. See, misinformation is when false information is shared but no harm is meant, right? But disinformation is when false information is knowingly shared to cause harm. As a matter of fact, in today's world, the distinction between both is quite blurred. Okay, I'll give you a good example. Today, even in the evening, I was receiving what I would say call as a fake news, right? It's based on a story about the application of an act called POTA, which is relating to about terrorism, circulating since 2015. For some reason, it gets reissued over and over, right? It's it is basically false information. But the question is, when the person shares that sort of information, was harm meant or harm is not meant? Because the way the message sounds, it is to deter someone from doing, like, we cannot share news on social media, right? Is that harm being meant or not being meant? So this, if you ask me, something quite blurred in the terms of the line. Okay. Now, what yes we gone through just now is basically, I think it's getting this bit too dark. Okay, sorry. Is actual examples of misinformation or disinformation that you think might fit this bill, these examples. Okay. The first example is the postal vote barometer of turnout, as a turnout, right? Question is, if I know an X amount of postal votes issued in a given constituency of a given election, can I use that as the barometer for turnout? Okay. So in August, it's very close by, right? A few months ago, there's a warning. I'm not going to tell you who said this. There's a 70% reduction of postal ballots. For those who are not very clear about this, in Malaysia, we have three types of votes that is being administered. We have the postal vote, we have the early vote, and the ordinary or normal vote. Okay, postal vote is for those who falls into specific classes, right? For example, the police, the military, the petugas SPR, the poor workers, EC officers, gazetted overseas Malaysians, TNB workers, selected through gazette government agencies, right? Early voters is very much restricted to military and police. Ordinary voters are pretty much everyone else. Okay, I just need to adjust a couple of things. So in 2023, there was an alarm. Postal ballot issues were substantially reduced, 70%. That's a shocking reduction. Now, is this really a legitimate scare? Let's go through the context. In GE15, the parent parliamentary seat of Subang in the heart of Klang Valley in Subanjaya, which has two child dunes underneath, Dun Subanjaya and Dun Kendara, had 2,850 postal ballots issued. One of the candidates made an assumption, right, for the context of GE15. So if you have 2,850 ballots issued in GE15, that means we divide the number of postal ballots among the two constituencies equally, right? This one major assumption was made. So in G15 was 1,425 postal ballots issued for Subang Jaya. Now, the assumption is for this coming for that PRN 6 2023 in August, we are expected to have 1,425 postal ballots issued for Subang Jaya, right? So the candidate said only 398 postal ballots were issued for Dun Subang Jaya. Of course, when you look at this number, we have in G15, November 2022, 1,425 postal ballots. Then in August, only 398. That is why you had the 70% reduction, right? And that becomes a warning. So this is the context of this message, right? By the way, it was accompanied with a video. Okay, now we need to debunk this warning because, as a matter of fact, there are so many facts that gone wrong here. First of all, we must understand one thing. Postal vote only constitutes around 2% of the total vote issued for the parliamentary seat of Subang G15. Only 2%. Okay, this is something I need to highlight everyone. Yes, there is a legitimate concern about postal vote in terms of the issue about one historically was enfranchisement issue. The other one is whether the postal ballots not only just got issued, has it been received by the voter on in time, and can the voter send back the postal vote to the returning officer's office before the cutoff time, on that is on the polling day 5 p.m. Right? But one thing we have to understand is the postal vote share is very, very small. I'm not minimizing the importance, but this is something we have to be on alert. Secondly, a lot of the emphasis, which is legitimate, about postal vote is about the overseas postal vote category. But let me tell you something. Postal vote, I know it sounds a bit controversial, was and is and always will be dominated by the domestic postal vote category called Form 1A. This is a general rule, right? Of course, Dun Subanjaya will be an anomaly to this, but that's just Dun Subanjaya. I cannot say that for all the constituencies. Okay. Who forms the Form 1A category? Police, military, poll workers, media, EC officer. Right? So we have to understand this. Who makes up the postal vote? Most of them is this group of people. Right? So as a matter of fact, those Tindak Malaysia volunteers and the candidates who became Petugas SPR, they had the privilege to vote using postal vote because on that day, they don't have the time to do this voting. They have a duty to administer the election so that the normal and ordinary voters like you and me can go and vote. The other thing we need to highlight is within the Form 1A category, one of the ways you can see the share of postal votes stand to grow bigger is when you have the share of police and military voters started to grow bigger. Because after all, the police and the military, they have the options to go for postal voting or early voting, right? Because they have to be on duty, especially the police, on the polling day. If you notice, in front of every saluran, your voting stream, there's one police pengiring, you have police everywhere else to ensure a smooth election day, right? So they don't have time to do the casting the vote on the ordinary vote day. But in the Subanjaya area, Kinrara, let's be upfront. The police and military presence is extremely small. So if you ask me, that is already another indication that the postal vote share for these constituencies are very small. The other part we have to understand is Dun Kinrara is the largest Dun, if I'm not mistaken, in Selangor in terms of electorate wise. Easily more than 100,000. And more importantly, we have to understand Dun Kinrara has 11,812 voters more than Subanjaya. That means Dun Kinrara has more salurans than Subanjaya. One saluran, you need 4 petugas at least, one ketua tempat mengundi and 3 kerani pengundian. Okay. Then every saluran, let's say we take the biggest size, one general number, let's say we take 750. You do the maths, 11,812 minus divided by 750. You get a number. And that number you times 4 at least. So the whole assumption that, oh, Dun Kinrara have 1,425 postal ballots and Dun Subanja have 1,425 postal ballots is already on totally wrong grounding. The whole assumption is totally wrong. Because Kinrara just have more voters, meaning more salurans, meaning more postal votes. So you cannot do this equal division. And we're not done with it. Okay? What has happened? When we actually presented a public response to this via our social media, the truth came out. The thing is that 398 postal votes was very, very specific to Form 1B. Form 1B. Postal votes, we have Form 1A, Form 1B, Form 1C, and then got the absent voters. Okay. In the next webinar, our head of our Putugas program, Suresh Kumar, is the best person for you to ask. What are the categories of the postal votes? But you can visit the SPR website, right? And for Dun Subanjaya, which is an anomaly, is the Form 1A happens to be the second largest category of postal voters. Okay, so in the end, how many postal votes were issued in Dun Subanjaya? Because we have done this work, we found out that the total number of postal votes that was finally revealed for Dun Subanjaya was around 600. Okay. The other thing I need to highlight is not all Portugas SPR for Dun Subangjaya. Votes in Dun Subangjaya. What do I mean by that? So let's say in Dun Subangjaya, you may have hypothetically 500 500 plus Portugas workers, for example, right? And this is just purely talking for KTM and Kerani Pengundian. Those out of the 500, not all of them is going to be voting in Dun Subanjaya because they could be voting in another state. For example, there happen to be a postal voter for in this particular state election for Kedah, but happens to be serving in Dun Subanjaya, or even within the same state. Like this does happen even among our Tindak Malaysia Portugas candidates, right? Some of them serve as KTMs or KPs in Bukit Lanjan, but they don't vote there. Their postal votes is attributed to other duns within the Klang Valley, right? So hence there's too many factors why the postal vote was count was very small for this PRN 6 2023. Right? So what we need to understand is you cannot use something of 2% to determine something to transpire. As a matter of fact, if your concern is the sharp reduction of postal votes, it's more of a manifestation of one important thing: urbanization nature. I will be upfront about this based on Tindak Malaysia's studies over the years, be it the state elections or the by-elections, be it at the DUN level, at the parliament level, or even the polling district, the Taramundi level. We noticed that the urban area usually have lower turnout compared to semi-urban areas or rural settings. So hence that drop has to do with the urbanization nature. Right? And at the same time, why do you think the overseas postal vote category Form 1B happens to be the largest? Okay, this is something, of my opinion, not only is an urbanized seat, it has high income. So that means the families here who have children, some of the children actually will be studying overseas, right? And for this place, we don't have much voters for the police category. A lot of the Portugas in Dun Subanjaya maybe not be voting in Subanjaya. So hence, the overseas postal vote category happens to be the largest. Okay, such data is very hard to get, by the way, just letting you know. But when Tindak Malaysia sends Pemerhati to other duns for those during the PRN 6 2023, we notice it's the Form 1A becomes the largest category. And that's the general pattern. Okay. The point is the postal vote share. First of all, it's very small for us to make judgment. And secondly, there are too many factors behind this postal vote count. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is the actual postal vote count that basically got issued for Dun Subanjaya for the August elections, because the candidate finally decided to reveal the whole truth. After we put a public statement, we have responded via the person's Facebook page. You can see in category 1A, which is the police, the military, the Putugas, and the media, they are roughly, let's say, around close to 170 votes. You can see the overseas voters. You got two types of categories. For in this instance, it seems to lump the absent voters and the overseas voters together. Absent voters by default becomes postal voters. I'm just letting you know this. Huh? There are two types of overseas voters. One is absent voters, and then the other voters they have to register very specifically for postal vote if the EC choose to gazette them, right? And category 1C is all the 10 government agencies. For this part, actually only TNB and the Ministry of Health only contributed 10 postal votes. This is something for all of you to think about. I know this is a very heavy topic, but how would you guard yourself from influence from similar incidents as such? What does it take for you to rebut such arguments? And especially during election time, when we find this sort of information, we have to rebut it immediately because we cannot have this outside is a misinformation. The intention was not to create harm, but it was grounded on false informations and false assumptions. Moving on from that, let's go to the second example, the Selangor voter population explosion. Well, someone has made a shocking discovery slightly after the state elections. After the state elections, some of us were shocked by the outcome, right? And some of us wanted to theorize. Why did the state election outcome was as such as that? Okay, so I received a particular WhatsApp message from one of the people I know and asking, is this true? I mean, it's good that you ask people who have some idea to check whether this information is true or not, right? Because we're talking about voter population explosion, right? Okay, this is the WhatsApp message I got. In GA15, registered voters 2.7 million. PRN 6 2023, August 3.5 million. So suddenly, from November 2022 all the way to early May, okay, let me rephrase that again. I believe the electoral roll for G15 was finalized sometime in early October, but it actually refers to a few months before. And the PRN6, while it was done in August, actually the electoral roll was is referring to a few months ago. So let's say we're talking about a gap of 8 months. So within the 8 months, Selangor suddenly have a net growth of 756,456 voters, right? So then the conspiracy is suddenly you're going to have voters coming from poorer state, changing the address on the purpose of toppling the unity government that happens to operate in Selangor. And this person claims that I was very tired putting all this information together. And very importantly, said this person got information from the Star newspaper website. So the whole idea is not the numbers just went up. The whole purpose of this number growth is to alter the election outcome. Let's debunk the argument. What is the actual figure, total electors? Actual total elector count in Selangor is 3.6 million. Total electors, PRN 6 2023, 3.7 million. Okay. So actually, if you do the maths, the net growth was 69,209 voters. Not a whopping 750,000 voters or so. So that raises a question. How did this person even came out with the numbers for G15 and PRN 6 2023? I think the person completely misinterpreted the data. of the star. But the intention was, if I may have to say, was to cause harm. So this is not really any misinformation. It was to create disinformation. You may disagree, but the intent was very clear, to spin a theory as though someone else was masterminding the mass movement of voters to topple the state government of Selangor. So according to Tindak Malaysia studies, there was a small electoral growth in rural areas and big growths in Hulu Langat, Kinrara, Northern Damansara, and Shala. As a matter of fact, the two duns, I think it's Bukit Kasing and Kampung Tungku, actually depopulated, right, in urban area. But the depopulation is very small. I'm just letting you know, even with all the Undi Lapamblas, not all constituencies will grow, right? Aging constituencies like Kampung Tungku and Bukit Kasing are not necessarily a big beneficiary of Undi Lapamblas. They are beneficiary in terms of most likely in terms of malapportionment, especially Bukit Kasing is undersized. But in terms of electoral growth wise, they're not a beneficiary. So some of them, not only when we went on Twitter and put a statement debunking the whole thing, and we even put our own data to show the figures of G15 and also PRN 6 2023 for every dun, so that you can find out actually how many voters were added or decreased, the net growth. For some reason, even with this information, some of the Twitter still justifying these wrongly quoted figures. Or that do not compare the number of electors, compare the number of registered voters. Actually, this person even got this whole statement wrong. Elector at this point is automatically registered so long you fulfill the conditions of Article 119, right? Citizenship, 18 years and above, and everything in between that is mentioned in Article 119. A voter is an elector who exercises the right to vote. So a voter is a subset of elector. I know these terms are interchangeable, but that's the proper way to look at it. For some reason, right? Some even went to twist this whole figures that was quoted in the WhatsApp message I show you, and say, "Oh, this 3.6 million actually refers to those who only just are registered voters. Actually, it doesn't show the electoral, right?" So then this person, for some reason, did the reverse maths and said GE15 got 4 million voters in Selangor, and in PRN we got 5 million. I mean, if you ask me, the person who went to do all this extra work to justify, even though we have rebutted it, clearly don't understand basic facts. This is the actual total turnout. Total turnout refers to total ballots issued. Total ballots issued is referring to total valid votes of all the candidates, total rejected votes, and total unreturned votes. We do not know who was the original person who came out with this twisted information on that I showed you on the WhatsApp image, right? Of course, there was someone who posted this on Twitter, but after we put a public rebuttal, our Twitter went super viral. Sorry, Twitter should be X post, now it's got X. If you ask me, that's the most viral X post, probably even the most viral social media post we have ever done in Tindak Malaysia's history, if I'm not mistaken. Right? It got reposted like 100 plus times. So much so, the person who tweeted that post showing that WhatsApp message had to take it down. And Malaysia Kini also took notice of this incident, and they also did a fact check and also mentioned Tindak Malaysia has rebutted this. Right? And they also took our GitHub data content showing the electoral figures of G15 and PRN for everyone's ease of understanding. This is our exact post. If you've tried to find this Twitter, this particular post, that post has been deleted. But our rebuttal still can be found here. Now, how would you guard yourself? Because this sort of image came through WhatsApp, right? Or it could appear reappeared as a popular message on X or on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, anything you name it. What does it take for you to rebut such arguments? This is something for all of you to think through. If you ask me, this is a very basic facts that has been publicly made available. And for some reason, some of them have misinterpreted to spin a theory, which I think can cause harm. And especially if you notice social media is a toxic place. And what more is especially after an election or even during elections. Polling time. What do I mean by this? Again, is extremely basic. This is no high level statistics, but it will still touch a bit on data. Now you hear all polling time extended to 6 p.m. Is it really true? That's assumption, right? Straight from Malaysia, Kenya, I'm showing this image. In Johor, elections 2022, particularly in the Dun Bekok, it's in the Labis area in northern part of Johor. How can some polling centers are closing early? Isn't it supposed to close at 6 p.m.? Or why is EC is closing some polling centers? Is it because the turnout was so low? Yes, Johor election turnout is very low. Also, then EC said, okay, no point of keeping the polling centers open until 6 p.m. Is it really true? Is it really true? So let's go and study what's happening. As a matter of fact, this story of a similar manner appeared in G15. And the interesting part is the candidate actually claimed the EC has informed him on the closing time of all the polling centers in Dun Bekok, but he claims whether has EC made any efforts to inform the voters. So some on X, that time is called Twitter, smell conspiracy. Is the EC doing the bidding of a particular coalition or political party by shutting the polling centers earlier? In Negeri Sembilan, there's one polling center called Kuala Milang in Kuala Pilang. Voter came after 2 p.m. You might think, oh, the polling center should be open until 6 p.m., right? The voter came and saw the gates closed. Sorry, you have to go. We can't allow you to vote. The polling center is closed. Of course, the voter is shocked because the voter is on the assumption of it should open until 6 p.m. So that's the Star newspaper. Now let's understand one very, very important thing. According to the Conduct of Elections 1981, Regulation 11, Sub-Regulation 5, the state EC will issue a public notice. Keyword public notice. Form 8 in the first schedule, which contains the following information. Let's really understand what this is about. If you don't believe this, please go to the Conduct of Elections website and find this information. One is constituency name facing the elections, early and ordinary voting days, ordered the candidates with the symbol with the proposed seconder's name, location of polling centers, and polling time for each polling center. It means for every pusat mengundi, there is going to have a polling time. And it does not mean every polling center going to have the same polling time. Maybe for Subang Jaya or maybe for Kampung Tungku or Bukit Lanjan, everything is uniform. For other constituencies, not the case. Let's go look at the next regulation. Regulation 11, Sub-Regulation 5A states that the standard polling time is 12 hours, but the EC has the power to determine other time ranges for whole or parts of constituency. That means if EC doesn't say much or EC sticks to the 12 hours, that's okay. If you those who study electoral history, long time ago, we had polling starting at 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. in Peninsula Malaysia. Okay, that was that time. Today, it is generally understood 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But please remember this part I said, but EC has the power to determine, sorry, I just want to make sure the internet is stable. Okay, EC has the power to determine other time ranges. It can say for this constituency, all constituencies polling center starts from 8 a.m. close 4 p.m. For the case of Kuala Lumpur and Bekong, maybe for 10 polling centers, it is 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But for one polling center which doesn't have many voters, or it's so remote that you need to conclude the polling early so that you can bring the votes back for the final tally center. That polling center will close 2 p.m. That polling center will close 4 p.m. That's what it means. The other thing I need to highlight before we go to the next part, the voters are actually informed if they just tune into social media. EC makes it very clear. You should go to the MySPS SEMA website. And when you go there, you key in your IC, they will tell you you are going to vote in this saluran, your voting stream, your polling center, and even the time. And they even had, because of the legacy of COVID, the suggested time. Okay, I can't recollect much for this PRN6, but I know during COVID time, there's a suggested time. And even that, during that COVID period, people were spunning wrong information about the suggested time. They say the suggested time is actually the time you should only come out to vote. Other times, you will not be entertained, right? So if you ask me, this is a misinformation. Now, the other thing, okay, so those who have been following Tindak Malaysia on our social media like Facebook or X today, you actually notice a lot of graphs, charts, maps all appear. I mean, that's our forte. We'll do all of this sort of stuff. But it is very important, and we make it very clear to all those who are viewing the content or reading or interpreting it. Please comment wisely and please interpret it wisely. Okay. Let's take the example of the Pulai by-election 2023, just in September. This is a hypothetical scenario. So far, we have not seen anyone uh, commented or have spun a false story out of it. Okay. What are you seeing in this graph? There's a youth proportion by the polling district, your x-axis, the one at the flat, and the one that is up is the voter turnout. As you can see, as the youth proportion increases, the voter turnout goes up, but it stops growing and when you hit 27.5% and it start declining. Right? So one conclusion is the youth voters did not come out to vote. The second thing is, if I were to find another polling district having 50% youth, which I don't think so will exist, or even drag it to 60, then your assumption is the voter turnout will decline. Is it really true? Is it really true? There's something you need to think about. So the better way to explain is, sometimes you see this graph, there is a correlation, but not necessarily the causation, right? So we do need to study the voter turnout based on other variables before we jump to a conclusion or before we ascertain there's a cause. For the second part, it's very dangerous, is to extrapolate. We try to draw that dotted line, you see that's a trend line, and drag it to 50% all. But if you reach 50% youth area, the voter turnout will be, let's say, 30%. No, that is not the case. If there is values of 50%, 60% youth area, who knows, the turnout will just go up. The extrapolation actually will mislead you. Okay. Now, even with this also, with the PH vote gain, Pakatan Apa vote gain Pulai, you can see that in the youth area, PH support seems to grow until it hits around 22.5% youth area and then start declining. But is it really true? Bear in mind in Malaysia, whether you like it or not, even I don't like it, but I have to admit, ethnicity is the most important variable that determines on how your turnout will appear and who you vote for. Right. So you do need to segment your study and see what has transpired. Right. So if you look at PH vote gain, but we narrow the youth proportion question within the Malay majority polling districts in Pulai, you'll notice the PH vote gain is going up. It's different to what you see in the youth proportion side, purely on the left hand side. Okay, why I'm telling you all of this? I know some of these are a bit complicated for you to understand. Is because I also have, this is my personal opinion. I have seen calls from my allies or news agencies stating that we should put more data out, open electoral data, general data as a whole, so the public can benefit and the country as a whole can benefit. I will tell you upfront, that sounds all good. As a matter of fact, Tindak Malaysia has been at the forefront of open electoral data since 2015. Okay. One of the things we have to tell you, especially based on all the examples I've told you before, we have to be a bit careful on this part, this whole disclosure of data. As a matter of fact, I don't want to mention which website or which news agency said, in other countries, this granular data, at the stream level, it should be made public for free. Sounds good, right? As a matter of fact, I'll tell you one thing. The Election Commission did that from the years of 2018, 2019 to up to a point 2020 for the by-elections. EC did that. So for me, it raises two things. Two things that I would say may touch a raw nerve to those who are going to listen this right now and even later. How many of us even use the data? I hardly see any information for that. Number two, has the data been used in the correct manner? Right. So far, there is no evidence for it because the first part, no one really uses the data. The second part is debatable. So what does Tindak Malaysia does in response to this? Because we have gone through all the examples. You might ask, what is Tindak Malaysia is doing about it? So first, this is a new push that we are going through for many years, especially on our open electoral data. Our GitHub, which I'll share with you shortly, we endeavor to put comprehensive data. What do I mean by that? The example, while it's not very clear to you, I hope you can see it, is when I show the data, it shows you multiple variables. It's for you to not only just to utilize, but to make the correct assessment of the elections that have taken place. And this, by the way, is just a Dun level. So I'll just give you an example. This is the demographics data for the Sarawak Dun 2021 elections. Let me tell you something. It's extremely difficult to find all this data in one single sheet, except through the Tindak Malaysia's GitHub. Okay, we have a standard template where we put all this data together, right? And when we study the data, if we think the data source has a problem, we will declare it. Or we just say in this case, the source that we think was credible, but unfortunately speaking, it probably have underestimated the Bidayo population. You probably have underestimated the Iban population. Too bad. I mean, the gap is so bad that it's absolutely misleading. So I would just say N/A, right? Because let's be upfront, Sarawak election 2021, the ethnic composition data is extremely hard to find, right? But look at the demographics data. Total electors, we look at the ethnicities, the type of voters, the age, there's a sex category, and the urbanization. We got at least 5 variables for you to study our accompanying election results from. So that effectively opens up opportunities for you to study more. But at the same time, I'm disarming you from misinterpreting because I've given you all the variables through this Tindak Malaysia guitar. Right? It's a collective effort of all our volunteers over the years to compile this data in a useful format. Right? Then we also do these webinars, regular and special webinars. This is a special webinar, but we have webinars, especially on conducted elections and postal voting, because we really need to combat a lot of the myths or misinformation, especially on the conducted elections front. Okay, I will not spill too much beans. I would encourage all of you to play the 30th of October for you to hear what our head of Petugas training, Petugas program, Suresh Kumaran, will have to say about some of the myths or misinformation for the conduct of elections. We will leverage our social media to combat lies and myths where possible within our limits via Twitter. Now it's called X, WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook. Okay, we haven't gone through Instagram and TikTok yet. But the point is, we will do whatever it takes because our volunteers have the expertise, have the understanding of the law, have the understanding of the data that is required to stop this sort of misinformation and disinformation. Yeah, I'm a bit mindful of the time. It's already 9:22. One thing we need to understand: we have to be vigilant when you are hearing and most importantly, distributing election stories. You get a WhatsApp image of this Selangor voter population explosion. Are you going to share that because it confirms a particular view of yours? Have you looked through the data? Have you studied whether it is correct? If it is not correct, don't share, right? Secondly, understanding elections require depth, not based on simplicity argument. I understand, especially on social media, everyone would like to come up with your own hypotheses based on simplicity, simple arguments. I will be very careful with this because simple arguments based on persuasive, some of us are very influential on social media. You either will be taking advantage or get taken advantage to disseminate misinformation and disinformation. Okay, so that wraps up for the my presentation. I really hope that all of you have a deep understanding, and I'll open the time for Q&A